Hello, welcome to VAA HiveMeet. I'm Tino Corsetti, and we're streaming live to YouTube. This is our fourth HiveMeet, and our audiences continue to grow each month, so you're all very welcome. During the course of this evening, you can type in your questions and comments in the chat box on YouTube. We'll be monitoring those and bringing them into the conversation during the Q&A. Now, HiveMeet runs in a virtual studio. I'm located near Mount Macedon. I'm now going to bring in my co-host, Andrew Wooten. Andrew, welcome.
Hello, Tino. It's good to be back live again. I've been telling my friends jokingly that I've become an influencer. But for that really to be true, I'm going to need to influence people to start taking mite monitoring seriously. And the reason for that you'll see on this map. And this shows that there's been detections now in Gippsland, as well as an expansion of the clusters in both central Victoria and northern Victoria. So it's coming to your hive soon, and you need to start monitoring perhaps every month. Now I'd like to just say a few words about our sponsors, BQual and BTrace. And before I do that, I just give a shout out to my very good friend Don Muir, who's just announced his retirement as one of the directors of BQual. And Don's been fantastic as a leader and a guide for their expansion. As well as that, Don's been instrumental in building the relationship between BQual and BTrace and the VAA. So thank you very much, Don, for that. Good luck in your retirement, and we promise to continue seeking your counsel and bothering you for your advice. VAA recommends that all beekeepers consider joining either BTrace if they're small or BQual if they're larger, and the quality assurance that will give you will be good for your business. And as you can see on the slide there, new subscribers to BTrace will get a special offer thanks to them coming through from VAA. Now, I'd like to hand back over to Tino so that he can introduce tonight's guest speaker.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Our guest this month is Rob Stevens, who is project manager for the Varroa Innovation and Resilience Initiative for Biosecurity Queensland. Rob has been working with Biosecurity Queensland for many years, including leading the responses to the Townsville incursions of Apis cerana. Again, just a reminder, at the end of the presentation, we'll have Q&A, so use the chat. And as you think of questions, please enter them, and we'll pose them to Rob after the presentation. Rob, thanks very much for joining us this evening. We're really looking forward to your presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thanks very much, Tino, and thanks to Andrew and Lindsay too for the invite tonight. It's a great opportunity to highlight some of the work we've been doing up here in Queensland. So, what I'm going to cover tonight is the current situation in Queensland. We're very similar to Victoria. We're now a combat jurisdiction. I want to highlight some of the work that what we call our VMIRI program, the Varroa Mite Innovation and Resilience Initiative, and also highlight some of the work that we're doing through the National Varroa Mite Management Program as well, and the support that's available to Victorian beekeepers. So I just want to give you a quick snapshot of the Queensland beekeeping industry. So as of last month, we have about 10,500 registered beekeepers. About 660 of those are what we would classify as commercially registered, and they own about 670,000 hives. So what's interesting in Queensland is about 73% of Queensland beekeepers are purely recreational, and they only have less than 5 hives. So about 4% of Queensland beekeepers actually own about 75% of hives in the state. And we're very southeast centric, that 65% of beekeepers are located in southeast Queensland, and about 85% are actually south of Bundaberg. So we've been in this fight since 2022 when Varroa first came to New South Wales. We've had a couple of different iterations of our program. I've been managing this program since 2023 when we were the Varroa Mite Preparedness program. We've now secured $5.5 million over 3 years, which will take us to 30 June 2027. And that's really going to help us continue continue the fight on against Varroa after the National Transition and Management Program ends in February next year. So my program also manages Queensland's component of that National Management Program and the Varroa Development Offices. So, like I said, our program's been at the forefront of Varroa mite management. We're continuing to roll out the engagement of our 20 workshops and our 1,200 individual VDO engagements. Excuse me. We're also going to continue to work with pollination-reliant industries, which is going to be critically important moving forward. So how did we get here? We all know when it got to New South Wales in June of 2022, by September 2023, unfortunately, they had declared that Varroa was no longer technically feasible to eradicate. By February of last year, the National Management Group endorsed the new response plan, and that included our National Varroa Mite Management Program, which includes your VDOs and your workshops that you get to attend in Victoria. And about that same time is when you had we came a little bit later. We made it to March this year when we had our first detection in Queensland, was in the Lockyer Valley. About a month later is when ACT joined the fight. And by the start of last month, we had multiple detections in multiple local government areas in Queensland, including the Lockyer Valley, Somerset and Brisbane Council. And by late in the month, we started to really see detections in the commercial sector. And also our Sentinel hives on the Gold Coast started to pick up detections of Varroa as well. So as of today, this number sits at 62 confirmed detections across the Lockyer Valley, Somerset, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Quilpie, which is out west, and North Burnett, which is up around your Bundaberg area. So it's well and truly moving through commercial areas right now, and we're expecting to see a large increase in numbers of detections as more beekeepers begin to test. And as Andrew mentioned before, it's critically important that beekeepers have to test monthly now. You're not going to get away with 16-week testing. Look, I know it's very cool especially down in Victoria at the moment, but it's critically important to continue testing wherever possible, because we're already seeing case studies in Queensland where people have only had 4 weeks between testing and they go from 0 mites to well above threshold levels. So also really important to just reinforce that Varroa remains notifiable in all jurisdictions, including Victoria. So you're going to start to see some beekeepers are getting away with some really high levels of mite loading in what we're calling sort of the honeymoon period. But eventually this is going to start to really catch up on beekeepers, and you're going to start to see colony losses. So already in Queensland, we've only had Varroa since March, and we've already got beekeepers that are already beginning their secondary treatment. So reinfestation is a real issue, and why constant monitoring is required. Because you can be doing everything right, you can be doing your treatment, and Varroa just will walk in the front door and you'll be back at threshold levels. So unfortunately, things are going to get worse before they get better. And while we're dealing with that reinfestation, it's going to be really hard monitoring Varroa and acting early. So even though Varroa is present in both our jurisdictions, Queensland and Vic, there's still the threat there from the border of New South Wales. There's some really high levels of mite infestation in New South Wales along the border, probably more so in Queensland than Victoria, but especially in the southeast along Tweed Heads, Wollumbar, that sort of area. They've got really high levels. We've also got detections right along the border in places like Bogabilla, Legume, Drake. But you've got the same thing in Victoria, that your Department of Ag has also got Sentinel Hive network based around the border, and that's where they've started to pick up some of these detections that are natural spread from New South Wales. So in addition to the surveillance that we've got beekeepers doing, we've really ramped up our surveillance in these border areas. So we've got 18 Sentinel hives in 17 key locations along those border areas. And just last week, 3 of our Sentinel hives in the Gold Coast, from the hinterland to the Tweed, actually tested positive. And really important that our national bee pest surveillance program, Sentinel Hives at the Port of Brisbane, also had advanced early detection of Varroa in some of those port-adjacent suburbs. And it really highlighted that beekeepers weren't doing enough monitoring in these areas, and the Sentinel Hives were the first to pick it up. When we put the word out and more beekeepers started testing, we started to see that area was lighting up and had probably had Varroa for several months before beekeepers had started to notice. So really critically important that beekeepers are out there testing and testing often. Sorry, let's go back a slide. It's a little bit of a delay. There we go. So we've got heat and hot and cold mapping that reflects where our public reporting comes from beekeepers. At the moment, as of yesterday, actually, our map represented localities within 10 kilometres of a detection. That's just changed today that we've upgraded to our new mapping system, which more aligns to the national mapping standards. So that's where you'll go to the 0.1 degree graticule, where each cube is basically 100 square kilometres. So very much similar to what you see with the maps in Victoria and New South Wales, which I'll show you shortly. So really important moving forward. You're going to hear us mention a lot of these terms in the next couple of years, your build-up phase and your established phase. So both Queensland and Victoria are well and truly in your build-up phase right now, where wild bees are going to eventually die out. This period could last between 2 and 5 years. And like I said earlier, reinfestation is going to be your biggest enemy, that you could be doing everything right and you're still going to have varroa mites walk in your front door of your hive until those feral hives are eliminated, basically. So given Queensland's size, it's going to be difficult for us that we're expecting different parts of Queensland are going to be on different timelines. Obviously, the southeast is infested right now, but we've got large chunks of the states like central and north and far north Queensland that, if we're lucky, might not get varroa for quite some time. So eventually we will move into what we call the established phase. So that could take 3 to 5 years, but the outcome of that with the wild bees that are left are going to hopefully be more tolerant to varroa, and hopefully the amount of treatments required per year is going to decrease. So there's a lot of doom and gloom when we're talking varroa, but with crisis comes opportunity. There are some eventual benefits of varroa once it does become fully established. There's going to be more reliance on beekeepers to service pollination-reliant industries. Hopefully that means better communication and better relationships with pollination-reliant industries. There should be less competition once the feral hives do die out. Should be increased floral resources and increased honey yields in the long term. Also, we're expecting, not immediately, but hopefully there's a reduction in things like small hive beetle and American foul brood from reinfestation as well when those feral hives are eventually moved. It's going to improve genetics improvement, and hopefully by the end of it, we've got better quality beekeepers. There's going to be a need for beekeepers to be opening their hives, inspecting their hives more often, and we're going to have better, more resilient beekeepers out the back end of this. So for now, though, the entire state of Queensland is still what we call a varroa mite biosecurity zone. So there are still some movement controls in place between the jurisdictions. To move bees from Victoria to Queensland right now, you do require what we call a biosecurity instrument permit. These applications are very much simplifying now that Queensland has varroa in multiple jurisdictions, but really important too that you have to keep accurate records, and that's both in terms of your hive health checks, your movement records, and moving forward, it's going to be vitally important for all beekeepers to keep records of their chemical use as well. As we're all going to start to transition to using chemical more often, you will have to keep records of that. So our legislation will very much mirror the spread of varroa. We have started the staggered reopening of borders. Since our first detection, we've already started to repatriate hives that had been stuck in New South Wales since the early detection. We've had beekeepers start to move hives from New South Wales and Victoria that aren't from Queensland, and we've just moved into our third phase now that varroa is spread across multiple regions of Queensland. We are simplifying the permit application process where you can have multi-use biosecurity instrument permits. So the same conditions will still apply for now, but you won't have to apply as often. One permit might last you for a 3 or 6 month period. We are moving into more permanent legislative changes where varroa mite will remain notifiable, but we will change its classification and we will simplify that interstate movement. So since our program began, we've actually issued more than 300 biosecurity instrument permits for beekeepers in New South Wales and Victoria, mainly from New South Wales, but we have had many Victorians as well, or particularly Queensland hives based in Victoria. At the moment, our turnaround time is just over a day for when you apply for that permit to being granted. And like I said before, that permit process is going to significantly become easier as Varroa is endemic in more places in Queensland. So to get to this point, though, we had to really upgrade our systems in the background. We created a bespoke permitting system and really incorporated mapping that was using the hot and cold layers from the other states. You'll see in this picture, we can map to and from locations overlaid on New South Wales heat map and Queensland cold mapping to sort of see where the risk pathways were. So this was really important as we transitioned over the last couple of years as Varroa mite became endemic, firstly in New South Wales and then into Victoria and into Queensland. But obviously, our main connection with Victoria is during almond pollination. So we don't have any almonds in Queensland, but each year more than 300,000 hives make the journey into New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia for almond pollination. Obviously, AgVic is working closely with this situation in Victoria, and this similar to us that they're progressively thinking about opening up the possibility for movement from New South Wales, and now it is possible that New South Wales beekeepers can move into Victoria with a zero alcohol wash, and similar goes for Queensland. If Queensland beekeepers are moving from areas that have had Varroa to get to almond pollination, they have to do testing 2 weeks prior to movement, and they have to return a zero alcohol wash. So each year we work with Queensland beekeepers and we engage with the guys that are planning to go to almonds, and we ensure that they've got a pathway home. And we're going to continue that tradition this year and ensure all the beekeepers that do make the journey down to Victoria can come home safely without exacerbating the spread of Varroa. Another thing we're doing in Queensland is using AI technology in border locations as well. So we're using things like what we call the Bee-Right technology. That's the next iteration of the Purple Hive project, which you might have heard about before. It uses AI with sensors measuring things like humidity, sound, vibration, and uses that algorithm to give us real-time monitoring. So that's giving us real-time detections of Varroa as opposed to the old school methods where we would be visiting sentinel hives every 6 weeks. So it's giving us much more accurate, more effective data on when that detections might happen, in particular around the border areas. So in Queensland, we use an online platform for our online reporting system. It's called B123. It's a GIS platform that allows beekeepers to enter their info either through a web-based form or through a app, which they can use offline, particularly if they're in areas that don't have mobile reception. So really useful that beekeepers can enter their hive checks directly from the field. So in Victoria, your system is very similar. You should all know about BMAX, and I'd be strongly encouraging all beekeepers to be doing that monthly reporting and submitting their data to BMAX, and that's both if it's positive or negative. It's really important that the negative data, it goes to that heat mapping, and that's how beekeepers can make informed decisions of where they want to move their hives. So in Queensland, and that QR code on screen takes you to our new improved heat map if anyone wants to have a look. But that map uses our passive surveillance from B123, but it also uses active surveillance data from government-led surveillance from our sentinel hives and those border locations and the ports, and it joins those data in a way that beekeepers can, like I said, make those informed decisions about their hive movement. So since our program began, we've had over 4,000 submissions to our B123 system. So that means nearly 40,000 individual hives have been checked by Queensland beekeepers from apiaries that include over 183,000 hives. So that's critically important data. We couldn't do this without the support of the beekeeping community. We definitely can only test a certain amount of hives each year, and it's just as important in Victoria that you guys are all out there doing your testing and submitting your data to the BMAX system. So this is where your data will end up in your Victorian-based heat map, which looks very similar to ours. That's got your negative and your positive. You can turn those layers on. You can do it across 16-week testing cycles. Hopefully everyone's seen the New South Wales heat map as well, which has showed that spread over time. Our map now looks very much similar to the New South Wales heat map. Really important if there are beekeepers making the journey interstate that they know how to access these mapping tools. And again, you can make those informed decisions before you make those interstate movements. Just really quickly want to highlight some of the other work we're doing in Queensland as well. We're really doing a lot of work with the Queensland beekeeping industry. One of our key deliverables of our VMIRI program was our Bee Biosecurity Roundtable, which really aims to maximise the collective action to manage varroa mite through shared responsibility with industry. So this was a 2-day event we held late last month. It was really important for bringing all elements of industry together. So that included peak industry bodies, beekeeping clubs, researchers, beekeeping suppliers, honey packers, pollination industry reps, and our internal policy officers. So we covered a range of topics, but there were 6 main ones about compliance, regulation and trust, pollination industry future, integrated pest management, information and research gaps, tools, education and support, and also that financial planning and economic consideration as well. So as a result of that roundtable, we were able to come up with 76 different strategies were put forward. Our next goal is to work with those strategies and prioritise 18, 3 across each topic, and start to figure out how we can deliver that in combination with industry in Queensland and keep this conversation going and keep really pushing the message of shared responsibility. Another thing we're doing here in Queensland is collaborating with industry via our Community Bee Innovation funding or grant program. This aims to allow beekeepers and pollination-reliant industries to better prepare for varroa mite. So we've got $500,000 over 3 years. Round 1 is now closed. We're about to open round 2 in July, and round 3 should take place a little bit around this same time next year. So it's really designed to engage and encourage industry collaboration and beekeeper-driven solutions to the problems that varroa is going to create. In particular, it's about innovation moving forward. So the theme of those grants is really around 2 major things. It's about delivering innovation for educational training or delivering innovation around varroa mite management and in particular tools. So some example projects are things like new varroa mite monitoring techniques, training workshops, field days. In particular, this is going to be useful when the VDO funding runs out. And we're also really trying to target our pollination-reliant industries as well and work with more than just beekeepers. Another thing we're doing is our behavioural analysis research. We're trying to really ensure that our messaging is getting to all beekeepers. Like we said before, we've got over 10,500 beekeepers. Much like yourselves, I'm sure Victoria is similar to Queensland, that it can be a slightly fragmented industry between commercial beekeepers and recreational beekeepers. It's important that our message is getting to all those different user groups. So we've engaged an external third party to do some research on that and really engage with all elements of industry, including commercial, recreational beekeepers, new beekeepers, experienced, and also across our geographical zones here in Queensland. Another initiative we've got off the ground in Queensland is a support network we call our Bee Biosecurity Champions. So this is where we've got all the beekeeping clubs in Queensland have nominated a biosecurity champion, and they're the first point of contact for our organisation to share concerns, questions and raise topics with. So this group is currently comprised of about 25 biosecurity champions from more than 15 different beekeeping groups. It's a dedicated group of bee enthusiasts that meet monthly with the Biosecurity Queensland, and they discuss all these emerging issues with industry. So it's really a two-way street that allows us to have that flow of information where we can disseminate our messaging, but also beekeeping clubs can pass over their concerns to us as well. So it's been a really fantastic way to close the communication loop with recreational beekeepers and provide that situational awareness for what our program's doing. So our motto moving forward in Queensland is really all about shared responsibility. Our VMIRI program is really focusing on engaging with all sectors of the beekeeping community. That's to provide up-to-date information, increase community awareness, establish networks, which are going to be critically important moving forward, and to jointly develop those management strategies, which I mentioned we were developing in the roundtable. So it's all about working together. We really encourage people to be joining their local bee club, joining your VAA down in Victoria. You don't want to be doing this alone moving forward. Just really quickly, I want to highlight some of the work we're doing in the National Varroa Mite Management Program as well. Similar to Victoria, we were allocated a set number of workshops. Queensland's actually delivered all of its original 19 allocated workshops. To do that, we engaged 19 contract trainers for the task. So in the course of delivering those 19 workshops, we've trained 331 commercial beekeepers and over 1,050 recreational beekeepers. So that means we've roughly reached about 36% of those hives in the state. So it's been really, really essential. Moving forward, there is very limited time. I'd really encourage beekeepers that haven't attended a workshop to do so as quickly as you can. In Victoria, you've got at least 3 workshops remaining. You've got 2 of your introduction to Varroa mite management workshops, one in Doncaster on the 1st of June, one in Beechworth on the 28th of June. And the national program has recently started rolling out advanced workshops too, which are really useful for commercial beekeepers who might have already attended a introductory workshop. This really takes it to the next level and really highlights some of the really specific case study information and the work that they've been doing in New South Wales. So one of those will be taking place in Beechworth on the 14th of June. And we're in a similar situation in Queensland that we've just got 3 remaining workshops left. Your VDO network is very similar to us in Queensland as well. We've got 6 Varroa development officers and 1 engagement coordinator. You guys do it slightly different because of the seasonality down there. You've got a couple of full-timers and 10 casuals. Unfortunately, with our invasion curve right now, Queensland has Varroa running hot right in the middle of winter, and our VDOs are going to remain booked up for the entire time till our funding runs out. So look, you're probably a little bit cooler down there. You might get a bit of a reprieve, but in Queensland, we are expecting Varroa is not going to slow down. So in Queensland, we've got those 6 offices. We are a very large state, though, so we've tried to spread those offices geographically based on that beekeeper distribution that I told you about in the early slides. The majority of our beekeeping industry is south of Bundaberg, and that's where our VDOs are sort of located to match. I'm a little bit biased, but I think we've got the best VDOs in the country here in Queensland. I think we're punching well above our weight. We've engaged with we've provided more than 900 engagement to the Queensland beekeeping community. That means that we've reached more than 4,000 individual participants during these 914 interactions. So Victoria's on very similar pegging to us, that you're doing really, really well with getting that message out there through your VDO network. So really important, if you haven't engaged a VDO, this project is time limited. A VDO engagement is anything from an individual one-on-one, face-to-face engagement with your local VDO and an individual beekeeper, excuse me, all the way up to what we call a mini workshop, where you could potentially have over 100 beekeepers attending a workshop in a day provided by a VDO. So really, really critically important that you use these VDOs while you have them. And just to end lastly, support is available. Really important you use that Varroa Development Officer Network while it's here. If you need to make a booking, you can email victoria.vdo@agriculture.vic.gov.au. And the national program also has a resilience officer available for your disposal as well. So look, it's not easy at the moment dealing with Varroa. If you need support, don't be afraid to reach out. And you can get more information at the varroa.org.au website for that. But that's about it from me. Thank you very much.
Much, Rob. That was fantastic. And we've had a number of questions coming in, so we'll start bringing them onto the screen, if you wouldn't mind answering a couple of them. Gino, have you got one there?
Yeah. Are there any special considerations to managing Varroa over winter? I know your winters are going to be different, a little bit different than ours in Victoria, but do you have any advice for monitoring Varroa over winter?
Well, the main thing is that you're going to have to continue monitoring, especially going into winter. Like, it's critically important in autumn that you are monitoring, because any mites that get past you there, you're going to be paying for them by springtime. So, really critically important that you're monitoring wherever available. Look, the weather is going to be a factor for you down there. You don't want to be cracking open hives where it's not sensible, but we've got conditions. Our problem up here is the wet season, that we've got to work around that. But we've got a fairly mild winter up here. But yeah, it's just, don't be afraid to continue to monitor your hives, because if you don't, it might be too late and those varroa numbers might get away on you.
Okay, there's a question here from Tony, if you wouldn't mind. How is Queensland going to deal with mite bombs?
Look, we're no different to any other state here. Queensland beekeepers have what we call a general biosecurity obligation. So that means you're not expected to know every threat you've got to beekeeping, but you should know about varroa, and you should be instigating integrated pest management. So you should be monitoring. Once you reach threshold, you should be testing. So if beekeepers aren't monitoring, they're not discharging their general biosecurity obligation, and that becomes an issue for compliance.
Another question: Do you find that there's been any sort of stigma or reaction to beekeepers that detect varroa and report, or are communities and beekeepers being more generous when other beekeepers are detecting varroa in their area?
Look, we think there definitely was a stigma. We'd like to think we're over that hump now. We definitely had a slightly different situation to Victoria, that our initial wave of detections was in recreational beekeeping community. We feel that there might have been a little bit of public licence or distrust with government and getting commercial beekeepers to report. We have well and truly got commercial beekeepers buying in now. They're regularly contributing to our B123 system. Those new areas that have lit up are due to commercial reporting, especially out west and in our Burnett region. So there's definitely nothing to fear from us. There's no risk of internal movement control or eradication of hives here in Queensland. So I think similar in Victoria, now that we can see what management looks like moving forward, it helps to remove that stigma. And really important that I think a lot of people are probably testing, but they're not always reporting. And like I said before, even if you're getting negative results, really important to submit those to your BMAX system so it can feed into that mapping project.
And here's a question about feral hives. Are we starting to see the feral bees dying out yet in Queensland?
Definitely not dying out yet, but we are definitely seeing reinfestation as a result of ferals. So we can definitely see that we've got good engagement with people in the Lockyer Valley. We've got whole groups of beekeepers we know are doing the right thing and they're treating. But like I said earlier, they're already being forced to do their secondary treatment because of what we expect is reinfestation from the feral population. So that is going to take time. Reinfestation is going to be your biggest enemy during that build-up phase.
So there's a question about the biosecurity champions. It sounds like a really interesting program. Do you have any insight into how that was developed and how it evolved?
Yeah, so it was something we really saw was important early on in our program. And similar to Victoria, we have or used to have a bee biosecurity officer, and we used that network that was pre-existing and then really engaged with the bee clubs and really fostered that system and really got them to nominate someone. And look, there's a lot of bee clubs around Queensland, but they're not all as well organised as each other. Look, a lot of these small groups, as you would know, there's sometimes a limited amount of individuals that are contributing. So we didn't want to put the burden on the president or the secretary of clubs. We really wanted a designated person on each club that could be our contact and could be someone we could work with and could really be like-minded and really spreading that message. So it took a little bit of time, but we believe we've got really good buy-in from a majority of the Queensland bee clubs now. And those monthly meetings are really, really useful for getting our messaging out.
Okay, and there's a follow-up to Tony's question about the feral hives. What about resources to follow up abandoned hives?
In terms of resources from government to find abandoned hives, look, that's something that's going to be a problem, and something the national program is working with, and something your BBO has been working with down in Victoria. And look, some people aren't going to have the stomach to deal with Varroa, and they will need to decide whether they need to exit the industry and how to exit the industry safely. So what we don't want is people abandoning hives. We want people to be making that decision as quickly as they can. If they're not able to put up the fight, we want them to be using those networks like our Biosecurity Champion Network or through our bee clubs, and finding other beekeepers that can either mentor them, support them, or could potentially take over their hives from them. Because the last thing we want is people that are just abandoning hives, deciding they want to exit the industry, and then them becoming mite bombs for their neighbours.
All right, Rob. Well, here's one last question.
Yeah, at this point in the infestation, are beekeepers experiencing colony loss, or is it too early in the infestation phase?
It's too early, but look, I think we're playing out very similar to New South Wales. We're seeing some really high mite levels. We're seeing a bit of complacency, but you're not going to get away with those high mite levels forever. And we do expect we'll start seeing colony losses in the next few months, and that will probably mean colony losses of wild population as well. So, look, we think we might have found it in March, but we think it's probably been in Queensland a couple of months longer than that, potentially since around Christmas. So we still haven't had it quite long enough, but we are expecting to see those colony losses come spring and summer.
All right, Rob. Well, look, thank you very much for your contribution. It's been fantastic. I might say to our audience that this is Rob's second talk for the night. So it's time we let him off and to go off and relax and take some time out. And so it's now time for our VAA update. And I'm going to introduce Lindsay Callaway, who's the VAA president. And he's just taken over from John Van Wiegel. John, thank you very much for your contribution. You're irreplaceable, but fortunately, Lindsay's doing a great job too. So I'll hand over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me on tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to provide a VAA update. Great job on the HiveMeet program. So we've got our annual conference next week, and in fantastic news, we've got a sellout. We've sold all registrations. So unfortunately for those that haven't booked their ticket, we've hit maximum. So it's exciting. We've got a lot to look forward to next week. Our theme for the program is business, biosecurity and beehives. And I'd say a big reason why we're a sellout is that we have an all-star cast. We have Cameron Jack in person, Lewis Bartlett, thanks to the crop pollinators, in person, Randy Oliver via Zoom, and the list goes on and on. So, the program team led by Andrew and Don White have done a great job, as has the whole conference planning team. So now we're focusing on the competitions. We've got all the honey categories covered. Angelique Drew has done a great job putting all this together, including all the other categories. And as always, we've got our rules and regs on the website. We've also got, picking up on our new branding, we've got 3 categories for our photography competition this year. The first category is I'm a Beekeeper. So this category includes images of beekeeping at work, moments between a beekeeper and their bees. So it's something just to showcase how proud you are to be a beekeeper. And then we've got We're Beekeepers category. So this category could be photos of an apiary in operation, working with equipment, working in collaboration with others, just capturing that we're all proud to be beekeepers together. And our third category is, I might have skipped over it, sorry, Andrew, is the home of Victoria's beekeepers. So this category celebrates the environment that sustains bees and beekeepers. So you can submit those category your competition submissions can go in online on our website. And thanks for removing me from the screen, Andrew. So we've actually raised a lot of money this year. We have a lot of support from a lot of fantastic organisations and businesses. These are our conference sponsors, and a big thank you to them. Rob Kerr has done a great job in rounding up a lot of support from industry. And we've sold out of trade stalls. We had a waiting list for trade stalls, and they're all sold out. So you'll see all these wonderful companies there next week. So a big thank you to them. And yeah, that's me providing a little update. And I do have good information that I think the Bendigo branch are going to put in a lot of entries into the competition, Andrew. So yeah, it's on for young and old. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. That's a great overview of the conference next week, and it's going to be an exciting event. So we're going to close out tonight. I just want to give everyone a heads up about next month. We have Matt Peterson from Dividing Creek Farm in Gippsland. He's just returned from a working holiday in Greece, and he's going to be talking about how Varroa is managed in Greece. So that should be a really interesting presentation. I want to thank everyone for participating tonight, and especially for Rob for his valuable insights from Queensland. I think we can learn a lot about what the upcoming beekeeping season is going to be like for us here in Victoria. HiveMeet is here to support Victoria's beekeepers as we build experience and get used to beekeeping with Varroa. So take care, and we'll see you next month. Thanks very much.